So, still with me? Great. Now, before we talk my mistakes, I want us to quickly look through the components of a US medical bill. It's different, for example, from what we see back home here in Nigeria and in most developing countries where you have one bill or pretty much two bills. Now in the US you get several bills, so I want to break it down. You get a bill from the hospital, and this covers the use of the hospital facilities for delivery and your stay in the hospital. It also covers the meds that they would give you, pain, morphine, all those kind of things. But basically, just look at it like your accommodation in the hospital for you and the baby, and then the meds. The second cost that you're going to incur is the OBGYN. That's the obstetrician stroke gynecologist. Simple English is your doctor. And then the cost that you're paying him is the cost for your prenatal care, which is called antenatal care in Africa. It depends. Your prenatal care, all the visits to his clinic, one visit after delivery, and then fees for him coming to the hospital when you're in labor to deliver the baby. So those are all his fees. The third thing that you would also pay for is lab works and ultrasounds. This covers your routine tests that you're going to have when you're going to see your doctor, the scans and all that. The next one is anesthesia. If you're going to have a C-section, you're going to need anesthesia. If you're going to have a normal delivery and you want to use an epidural, then you would also need anesthesia as well. So this covers the fee that you're paying the person who is administering the anesthesia. So that's the anesthesiologist. In some hospitals, they will tell you that anesthesia is included. Be careful. That is the cost of the medication, the meds. This anesthesia cost is the cost that you pay the person that administers it. And then the last cost that you'd most likely see is the pediatrician's cost. So that's for the baby. It covers the evaluation of the baby after birth in the hospital, and then of course subsequent visits after discharge. So now we can go into the mistakes. I did make quite a number of mistakes, so I'll just be sharing the major ones that impacted my bottom line significantly. So, mistake number one, I had no clear, definite healthcare plans prior to leaving for the US. I mean, usually when you've made up your mind to go to have your baby in the US and you have family and friends to stay with, when you try to inquire, like, how much is this thing going to cost when I get there? You hear things like, oh, don't worry, when you come, we'll do all that. Or, my doctor is a great guy, I'll take you to him when you come. Or the classic one, I mean, there's this doctor that my friend's niece used when she came to have her baby last year. When you come, I'll take you to her. Sounds familiar? I'm sure you bet. So what's wrong with all this? I'll tell you. I heard the don't worry, we'll sort all that when you come part. And so when I got to the US at about 35 weeks, we called up a few family friends, got some OBGYN contacts and started calling them to book an appointment. But guess what? All of them were fully booked. I mean, all of them were fully booked for the next 4 weeks. 4 weeks? 4 weeks I'm going to be having the baby. So what's the plan? Now, so for even those that had spaces in their calendar, immediately I told them I was 35 weeks. They simply told me they couldn't take me on as a patient. I started scouring the internet, looking everywhere for OBGYNs in Houston. For every call I made, I was turned down. And you can't even begin to imagine how stressed I was already getting. Finally, I found a doctor who agreed to see me. And 17 days after I arrived in the US at almost 37 weeks, I went for my first OBGYN appointment. So even though I had a cover letter from my consultant OBGYN back home, my new doctor insisted that I redo all the tests and scans. And can you imagine? That alone cost me over $1,000. And that's apart from his own fees of $2,300. Now, how does this compare to the best cost I would have gotten if I had started the process of getting a doctor much earlier and most likely gotten accepted by the more affordable doctors? Now, using current costs for 2013, 2014, which is like 4-5 years later, I would have gotten a savings of almost $850 if I had gotten accepted by an OBGYN on time. Rephrase, but if I had gotten accepted by the more affordable OBGYNs, because I would have started searching on time. So, for example, if you look at the table, you will see that I was paying $3,365. The best cost now, as at today, is 2,520. This is 5 years later. I mean, that's already 850. So that's one mistake down. Second mistake, what did I do? I chose a doctor first. Does it sound like a mistake? Oh yeah, it is. Now let me explain why. The major difference in cost between, in a city, so you could go to a city and one person tells you I paid 7,000, next person tells you I paid 5,000. The major driver of the difference is the hospital cost. Yes, the hospital cost. Now, despite having similar facilities and care, Hospital A can charge twice as much as Hospital B, even though it's just 2 blocks down the road. Now, I didn't know this when I was going to have my first baby. I didn't even know that doctors do not just bed babies in any hospital. They bed babies in hospitals where they have birthing privileges. So the way it works is you have a doctor, and the doctor has privileges in 1, 2 hospitals, max 3. And it's only in those hospitals he or she can bed the babies. I didn't know that. So when I found out that, when I finally got a doctor and I went to find out, what hospitals would I be betting the baby in, guess what I found out? The guy was only having privileges in the most expensive hospitals in Houston. Wow. So that landed me a $3,300 bill at a time when the average hospital cost in Houston was $2,000 for a self-pay patient. Yes. Third mistake, I didn't find out all the possible costs before delivery. Yeah, remember that the list of costs I called out earlier? I'll tell you what I did. Now, while I found out and I had prepaid for the hospital and OBGYN fees, I wasn't sure if I was going to use an epidural or not. So as such, I didn't find out the cost. Talk more of even asking them, what it was or paying for it before delivery. Well, when I got into labor, the pain was something else. Was something else. That let me just leave it there. It was something else. And when I could no longer bear it, I asked for the price of an epidural. After several checks in the hospital, my husband told me it was $600, and so I decided to take it. Now, thinking about it in hindsight, I'm sure the guy had gone to look for this course like 3 times, and I kept saying no. I think he came back the first time and said 1.5. I said no. So he kept going and coming back until he said it was 600. I said okay, I was going to take it. But then, guess what? The next morning when I was recovering, I got a visit from the billing department, and the lady came with a bill of $2,500 for the epidural. Almost passed out. I told her, but this is not what we were told the day before. I mean, the day before we had been told it was $600. She told us she didn't know where we got those costs from, because even if we had prepaid before delivery, the best cost we'll be getting would be $1,500 and not even $600. It definitely wasn't a funny experience. I wished I could turn back the hands of time and prepay the costs. To cut the long story, she gave us 2 options. Pay immediately and pay 2.5, or you go home and you get a bill of $4,000. Of course, we had no choice. We had to pay the $2,500. Had I known, I would have saved myself $1,000 by just being more proactive and finding out the cost for an epidural and then preparing for it. And guess what? If I had done this, I would have found out that if I didn't end up using the epidural, they would refund me my money. Well, so that's it. Those are the 3 major places where I missed it and ended up being too generous with the US healthcare system. By now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, so how much would Ify really have paid if she had not made all these mistakes above? I would have paid $6,710. Yeah. And I paid $10,375. So let's see about 4,000 more. Do I feel bad? Not anymore, especially because I got better costs the 2 times afterwards, and secondly because I know that you're going to be much wiser and you're less likely to make these mistakes. Now, a few more things before I close on this. During the search for the best possible cost during my second pregnancy, I learned that the cost of having a baby in the US differs by state and even by city. Do you know by just changing my city from Houston to San Diego, California for my second baby, I got an additional $1,360 savings versus the best cost I would have gotten in Houston? Oh yeah. By having my baby in San Diego, California, I paid $5,350. Same normal delivery with epidural. Yeah. Okay. Now we are all clear on the major pitfalls to avoid in order to get the best cost so you don't get any outrageous bills and all that. You're also clear on one or two tips on where you can find childbirth deals. I'll tell you more later. I think it's time to talk how to ensure that you have access to these facilities. Yeah, how to ensure you get a visa. So next up, the three biggest mistakes expectant mothers make that leads to visa denial or being refused entry into the US. Proven ways to avoid these mistakes and some real life examples to help you get the message faster.